Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Full Council on Thursday, the 30th of July 2026. Agenda item 1 is declarations of interest. Do I have any, please? I cannot see any declarations of interest, so we'll move on to agenda item 2, consideration of draft minutes from our previous meeting held on the 18th of June 2026. Do I have any matters of accuracy, or otherwise do I have a proposer and seconder to adopt them as a true and accurate record, please?
I did spot a typo, which I think might be the transcription software having a funny moment, which was it's on page 8 of the report pack, just under halfway down. In a reply, it says the Chief Executive replied that the authority get a fixed grant from the government, the Isles of City education grant, rather than silly. So I just want to amend that typo. That's the only thing.
Thank you, Councillor White. With that amendment, do I have a proposer and seconder, please? Any against? Any abstentions? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 3 is Chairman's announcements, and I have 3, although I've lost 1. No, there it is. I recognise the concern that many residents have raised regarding South West Water's proposal for dealing with sewage on St Mary's. The Council have recently met with South West Water to ensure these concerns have been clearly communicated. To support ongoing transparency and accountability, we've invited South West Water to attend a scrutiny committee meeting in September, where members will have a further opportunity to question the organisation directly on behalf of our communities. We remain committed to representing the residents' views and keeping proposed solutions to this matter under close review. Today is the first full council since the opening of Islands View, our excellent new care home that will provide high quality care and support for our community. The facility represents a significant investment in the future of health and social care on the islands. Its integration with the hospital creates a more connected approach to care, helping to ensure that people receive the right support in the right place. I'd like to thank everyone who's played a role in bringing this project forward. It's been a tremendous collective effort. I also fully recognise that the building is only part of the project, and the integration of staffing to support the needs of residents and other individuals living in the community will be a priority going forward. We now look forward to the redevelopment of Park House, which will provide much needed accommodation for health and social care staff, helping us to attract and retain the people who deliver these vital services. Members will be aware the Council was informed recently that an inter-island boat operator intends to withdraw its winter services between St Mary's, St Agnes and St Martin's, citing rising operating costs and low passenger demand. While the Council is not responsible for funding transport services, we acted immediately to seek emergency support from the Department of Transport. Following a request for additional evidence, information on winter service usage was submitted to support the case for government assistance. I'm grateful to various members who supported this piece of work. Although I'd hoped to provide a positive update today, the Council is still awaiting a formal response from the Department for Transport, although today we have received a holding reply. I recognise the concern and uncertainty the situation is causing, particularly for residents of St Agnes and St Martin's. Please be assured the Council continues to press for a resolution and will keep members in our island communities informed of any further developments. This situation once again highlights the inequality we experience when benchmarked against mainland communities with subsidised or free bus fares. And finally, congratulations to our under 14 and under 16 gig rowers on their fantastic success at the recent county championships, where they both brought home championship titles. A huge thank you to all the adults who support, encourage and commit to helping make this achievement possible, as well as all our junior rowers. Agenda item 4, consideration of any questions under Standing Order 14. I have none. Agenda item 5, I have no consideration of any motions received in accordance with Standing Order 12. Agenda item 6 is to receive draft minutes from committees for information of Health and Wellbeing Board, Scrutiny and IFCA. Unless relevant chairs wish to make any comments. Councillor Mumford, I can see your finger. Anything?
I was just going to propose that we accept those minutes.
Okay. All those in favour of doing so? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, I think that's my belt and braces approach to that one. I have no urgent items under agenda item 7, which brings us into part 1, planning application P26056, replacement of roof covering and rainwater goods at Porthmelon. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So this application relates to the processing hall, which is the big building on the Porthmelon waste management site on St Mary's, and seeks planning permission for the replacement of the existing roof covering and associated rainwater goods. The application has been submitted by the Council of the Isles of Scilly on land within the Council's ownership and therefore cannot be determined under delegated powers, requiring a determination by full council. The proposal is essentially a maintenance and infrastructure improvement project of an existing operational building. It involves replacing the deteriorating profile metal roof with a new insulated composite roof system, together with replacement rainwater goods. The existing solar panels and other roof-mounted equipment would be temporarily removed and reinstated once the works are completed. Importantly, there is no change of use, no increase in operational capacity, no extension to the building footprint, and no significant alterations to the building's appearance. The only physical change is the modest increase in roof height of approximately 140 millimetres, resulting in, as a result of the insulated roof covering. The proposal has been assessed against the development plan and all material considerations, including impacts on the conservation area, national landscape, biodiversity, flood risk, and neighbouring amenity, and officers have concluded that the proposal represents an appropriate upgrade to essential waste management infrastructure and would not give rise to any unacceptable planning impacts. No public representations or objections have been received, and the consultation period ended on the 24th of July. So accordingly, the recommendation before members is to approve the application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you, Lisa. Members will be familiar with this project from previous full council discussions. There are no objections or representations from the public. I would like to propose both recommendations to approve this application. Thank you.
Councillor Peacock.
I'll second the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other representations that wish to be made? Okay, I have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That one is carried. Agenda item 9 is planning application P26042, P26043. Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So these reports relate to actually 4 linked applications concerning 2 Grade 2 listed K6 telephone kiosks. I've got a lot to read out, so just bear with me. There is one at Middletown and St Agnes and Higher Town on St Martin's. The applications seek permission and listed building consent for the installation of micro wind turbine, a solar panel and associated equipment to provide an alternative power supply to the kiosks. The applications have been called to full council by local councillors due to concerns regarding visual impact, effects on the setting of the listed kiosks and the character and appearance of the Isles of Scilly conservation area. So before turning to the officer recommendation, it's important to be clear on what is not in dispute. Officers acknowledge that there are likely to be some public benefits associated with the retention of public telecommunications infrastructure in remote island communities. Officers also acknowledge there is a policy support in principle for both community infrastructure and small-scale renewable energy generation. The Conservation Officer has assessed the proposals and concluded that they would result in less than substantial harm to the significance of the listed kiosks and to the character and appearance of the Isles of Scilly conservation area, and officers agree with that assessment. Since publication of the agenda, the additional information has been received from BT via the applicant's agent. BT has clarified that the kiosks did not historically have a separate electricity supply and were instead powered through the telecommunications network. BT advises that this arrangement will cease following the national withdrawal of the Public Switched Telephone Network, PSTN, requiring an alternative power source if the kiosks are to continue operating in the future. BT advises that the kiosks are intended to migrate to a mobile IP-based solution, and that the proposed wind turbine and solar installation would provide the power necessary to facilitate that migration. BT has also provided further information regarding the current status of the kiosks. They have advised that the Higher Town kiosk has not been operational for a considerable period, and that service will be restored through the mobile IP-based solution once a new power source is available. BT also advises that whilst no open fault is presently recorded against the St Agnes kiosk, they are aware that faults may exist, and an engineer is scheduled to attend the Isles of Scilly during the week commencing the 4th of August to investigate and undertake repairs where necessary. The applicant's case is therefore that without a proper power supply, the kiosks will cease to operate following migration away from the copper network and may ultimately be removed. The applicant relies upon the public benefits associated with retaining operational public telephony infrastructure, including emergency communications and community resilience. However, BT has also confirmed that it has not undertaken a formal appraisal of alternative kiosk locations or alternative power supply solutions. The principal issue for members is therefore whether sufficient information has been provided to demonstrate that the proposed wind turbine and solar arrangement represents the least harmful and most appropriate means of securing those public benefits. The National Planning Policy Framework requires any harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset to be clearly and convincingly justified. In this case, the applicant's justification is that the proposed wind turbine and solar installation is necessary to retain the telephone kiosks in operational use following the withdrawal of the copper telecommunications network. Officers accept that an alternative power source will be required if the kiosks are to remain operational in the future. However, BT has confirmed that it has not undertaken a formal appraisal of alternative power supply solutions or kiosk locations. Whilst the applicant maintains that the proposed arrangements represents the most sustainable and appropriate solution, little information has been provided to explain how that conclusion was reached, what alternative approaches may have been available, and whether they were technically feasible or why they were discounted. This does not necessarily mean that a less harmful solution exists. Equally, it does not demonstrate that proposed development is the only available solution. Members are therefore being asked to determine what weight should be attached to the applicant's assertion that the proposed wind turbine and solar arrangement is necessary, and whether identified heritage harm has clearly and convincingly been justified in accordance with national policy. Members may conclude that the public benefits associated with retaining operational telecommunications infrastructure outweigh the identified less than substantial heritage harm. Equally, members may conclude that sufficient information has been provided to demonstrate that the proposal represents the least harmful means of achieving those benefits. So the recommendation before members therefore remains one of refusal. Should members consider that additional information regarding alternative power supply options would assist in determination of the applications, members may also wish to consider whether a deferral would be appropriate to allow further clarification from the applicant. That would mean deferring until late September when the next full council is scheduled. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Councillor Legg.
Yes, so I visited the phone box a couple of days ago to check on its working conditions. It couldn't place a call. I couldn't get it to accept any coins. The handset is in several pieces. I tried to ring the phone box from an outside source, and whilst I received a ringing tone on that outside phone, the phone itself did not ring and there was no way to answer it. As far as I'm aware, and I've lived on St Agnes my whole life, the phone box has been in this condition for at least 5 years, if not 10 years. So it is definitely not in working order and has not been missed by the community. However, having said that, for emergency use, it would be good to have some telecommunications options on the island. Currently, these are only provided by the Island Hall, where public internet access is available. Had there been any community consultation on BT's plans for this phone box? I believe we could have come to a solution which would have worked for everyone involved. There's a nearby hedge which this pole could be sited behind, and so therefore screened any impact on the heritage environment of the listed phone box and the scheduled monument of St Agnes Lighthouse. I'm also interested in whether Western Power Distribution gave any comments, because this is sited on where the power cables come from the nearby transformer. They would run under this site, and this would block access to that transformer.
I can comment that we didn't consult National Grid on this application because it wasn't proposing to connect to the network. So they haven't been consulted, and I haven't got any comments as to how they feel about being blocked.
I would suggest BT have a conversation with both the community and National Grid. I propose the recommendations.
Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, so again, being on St Agnes also qualified that I cannot remember the last time I saw someone make a call from that phone box. I think it was when I was a child. I think it's that long. I remember long queues before mobile phones, but that was eons ago. I think just for clarification of what Councillor Legg's saying, if you look at the picture on page 3, sorry, it's not, it's on agenda pack on 51, but it's actually annotated 3. If you look at the picture of St Agnes, just for clarification, look at the phone box, just behind it is a stone wall, and then just behind that is actually the power transformer. So it seems somewhat odd to me that no conversations had with Western Power in the fact that it's like adjacent their building, their kiosk. I would make the assumption, and the question really for Lisa, if we refuse at this point, would you expect BT to come up back with proposals, or would you not, or were we in a better position to defer it?
I am aware that if we refuse it as recommended, if members refuse it, they would likely appeal that decision to overturn the council's decision.
So if I come back, maybe a deferral will be a stronger position for us to actually have a conversation, because obviously if they appeal it, it will go through on appeal. It may go through on appeal, may as is.
Right. A deferral would give the opportunity to have further dialogue with the applicant. Yeah. Yeah.
Propose a deferral then, please.
Councillor White, you were next, and then Councillor Blackwell.
I'd just like to sort of echo Councillor Legg's comments, really. It's a similar situation on St Martin's. The phone box is in disrepair. I went to it the other day, no dial tone, it's not operating, and it hasn't for several years, I believe. While I agree having the additional resilience of an option of a working telephone box would be good, I think they haven't provided enough information in the application. They haven't looked at alternatives. And I think in the initial application, they even slightly misrepresent the relationship of the phone box on St Martin's to the adjacent residential property, saying it will have no impact, where their own design shows it overhanging the property. It obscures 3 or 4 of the windows on that side of the house. So, I don't think they've potentially taken this really big impact into consideration. I was minded to, as Councillor Legg would, to go with the recommendation, but if they're likely to just go to appeal, then perhaps a deferral is better if we can get them to provide some alternative options.
Great, thank you. Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. These applications have proved to be contentious to the local community for the material considerations the Chief Planning Officer has set out in her report. The key issue is that the applicant has not demonstrated the less problematic alternative power options are unavailable. For the reasons given in the report, I would like to second both recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor
I
Marcus.
would I would like to second Councillor Peacock's recommendation of deferral because I'm not sure that the communities on the off-islands know that if we refuse it and it goes to appeal, then I think I'd rather have a conversation with the applicants and try and work a better solution out rather than just refuse it straight away.
Thank you. Councillor Legg.
Following Councillor Peacock's suggestion of deferral rather than refusal, I would be happy to go for that, and I'm conscious that the proposal to refuse was tabled first, and so I don't know if I can withdraw my recommendation to refuse and we vote on deferment first. Do we have a monitoring officer here today?
So let me just be crystal clear within my own fuddled little head.
What you need to do is ask John's proposal, Dan's recommendation, to have an alternative recommendation. Vote on having an alternative recommendation. If that goes through, that then becomes a substantive. The other one drops away. Then you then have to have the vote on the.
Okay.
You then have to have a vote again on it to be approved. But John's goes first.
Okay. So we've got Councillor Peacock proposing deferral, Councillor Marcus seconding deferral. We're going to have a vote on that,
Whether it becomes a suspensive.
Yeah.
which will then become the recommendation for deferral. So we're clear on that. So all in favour of deferral? Any against? Any abstentions? Councillor Legg, your light is on. Not anymore. So deferral now becomes the substantive option, which we're going to vote on. Okay. It's like deja vu, isn't it? Okay. All in favour, excuse me, all in favour of a deferral?
Well, assuming that both Councillor Peacock and Councillor Marcus now recommend it as the substantive.
Okay. So we need, Councillor Peacock, are you still proposing the deferral as our new substantive recommendation for this report?
Yes, I propose a deferral.
And Councillor Marcus, are you still?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All those in favour of deferral, please show your hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion is carried. Is that fine? Thank you very much.
Number 10 is another administrative issue.
Thanks, Lisa. Agenda item 10, Children and Young People's Plan, Isles of Scilly Partnership Report. As members have been informed prior to the meeting, we're not having that paper today. I am aware the report has been shared with DFE and Ofsted, but we still need to have a vote to take it off this morning's agenda with the intention that it comes to September's meeting. So do I have a proposer and seconder, please, to Councillor Nixon proposing, Councillor Peacock seconding.
Yeah.
All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Which moves us on to agenda item 11, quarter 1, 26-27 financial performance summary.
Thank you, Chair. Report today sets out the financial performance for the Council for the first quarter of 2026-27. I'll move first to where we are in terms of our revenue budget position. You will see that the forecast now for the year, based on data for the first quarter and estimates for quarters 2, 3 and 4, are that we will overspend the year by £234,000. There is a breakdown set out for of how that is arrived at. The biggest significant variance we've got is an overspend in adult social care of just under £181,000. Primarily this is because of non-delivery of the savings plans that we agreed in the budget when we set it in March. or certainly not delivering them on time, and extra costs in terms of moving to the new care home. We are working with finance and the service at the moment to produce a more detailed report on the delivery of the savings plans and the improvements needed to bring adult social care back within budget. That report is in its first draft stage. It needs slightly more work on it before we can bring it to members, therefore it wasn't available for July. I apologise for that, but primarily we focused the attention of our adult social care staff on the transition to the new care home during July, which obviously then had a detrimental impact on being able to get that report completed. We will complete that report during August and bring it to members at the earliest convenience in September to give you a more detailed breakdown of performance on adult social care and the improvements they need to bring their budget back within the approved limits. Moving on, we've got children's services. We have an underspend at the moment, just under £100,000, mainly due to the not filling all the posts that we've got. Plans are in place, recruitment is ongoing, but obviously due to the fact that we're a quarter of the way through the year and some of those posts haven't been filled, and they will not be filled until at least another month. There will be savings at the moment that are forecast. No doubt there will be pressures later in the year, but at the moment we don't know what those are, and we are predicting that they would be a slight underspend of about 100,000. Fire and rescue is showing an overspend of £70,000 at the moment due to some increased staff costs and increased training requirements. Work is ongoing with the Chief Fire Officer to assess how we can bring spending down. Some of the spending is one-off on the basis that we are slightly over-establishment at the moment due to a very successful recruitment process last year, on the basis that we have a number of firefighters who are due to leave the service in the next 12 months. So there was a bit of a conscious effort to ensure your over-establishment and to get those additional resources in place. The salaries obviously then create a slight overspend, but there's also the biggest element is getting those people trained up to the standards required. So I think we will see that overspend will not get repeated on future years. We just need to find a way to mitigate it in the current year, and those discussions are ongoing with the Chief Fire Officer. In terms of the airport, we have a net overspend of about 55,000 forecast at the moment. This may get worse, depends on activity. There's a significant, as we're all aware, and members are aware, a significant reduction in Skybus activity in the first quarter. That's probably equates to somewhere in the region of £150,000 less income from Skybus. Fortunately, that's been offset by approximately £40,000 to £50,000 worth of cost savings in the service and additional income in some of the other areas up there, including quite a significant uplift in general aviation activity, and some additional charges that we're recovering on freight and from the search and rescue helicopter. So that has helped mitigate it to a certain extent. We don't and have not yet got the July numbers. Obviously we've got 2 more days to go for July. Activity by Skybus has increased over July compared with the previous months. But until we get their numbers, whether they're up to the level that we had anticipated, which is basically similar to last year, we will know from the end of the first week in August. So again, we will report that back probably in our next financial monitoring report, which will not be until about November, but we will give members informally an update of July numbers, so you're aware of the position at the airport. So that are the key variations at the moment which are forecast. No doubt there'll be pressure as we go through the year. I'm hopeful that once we get the adult social care plan in place and more focus on it, that we will start seeing reductions in the adult social care forecast overspend. we have been holding off doing a recruitment at the moment to try and replace some of the agency work to allow for the transition to the new care home, but we are ready now to start a recruitment process to and hopefully the new care home, which is a fabulous place, will help attract people to come and work. In terms of moving on, the airport monitoring is there. As you can see, we're well down on numbers in the first quarter, as I've just suggested. There's just set out there in detail, and the graph shows that. As I said, the forecast savings, you can see the red savings and the amber ones, they're primarily around adults, and those were the big numbers. And some of the other smaller savings are amber and maybe moving to either green or red as we go through the year. We will keep that monitoring in place, and we are working on a more detailed savings monitoring table to go in here to give a little bit more analysis, and that will be available for the second quarter. As I said, we will be bringing a more detailed standalone report on the adult care service and their budget in September. But you can see that primarily our problem is in and around adult social care, and it's not a surprise. We've known that when we set the budget. We knew that they had a significant budget pressure. What I will do before I move off of the revenue position is say that the forecast is 234,000, as I've said, and that's more than we've allowed for, more than the EFS that we've been allocated. But we did set a high contingency budget, corporate contingency budget of just over £400,000. At the moment, that in these forecasts is untouched. So if we actually finish the year based on this position and this forecast, we would actually be an underspend, because we would have enough in the contingency to cover the overspend at the moment. So that's where we are. So it wouldn't have a detrimental impact on our usable reserves or require us to ask central government for any further support. Moving on, the capital expenditure is set out there. There's some adjustments which have been approved in previous standalone reports. Just to say that spend on the capital programme after the first quarter, I mean, if it was a straight line, you'd probably be expecting 25% capital. It doesn't really run on a straight line like revenue on a routine, and we have a 10% spend after the end of the first quarter, slightly behind. It's not a surprise, and I would, as with most capital programmes that we've had in the past and capital programmes that I've experienced elsewhere in other authorities, will always probably be slippage as we go. The estimates at the beginning of the year usually turn out to be slightly over-optimistic, so we will monitor that and keep that going with the forecast as we go during the year. Set out is the latest position from a financial position in terms of the museum. I'm going to assume that is as read, and we have a further report in part 2 about the latest position on the museum, and we've had further recent discussions at previous meetings. Council tax performance, I can say that we are slightly better than we were last year. I wouldn't sort of suggest that that is a great position, because last year was probably the worst year we had in council tax collection in my memory, but we are better than that, so we're not getting worse, we are getting better. Some of the reasons that we had a poor collection rate last year was the introduction of the second homes council tax and the empty homes council tax. Both of those were estimates of how much we would collect, and as we've set out in previous reports, the collection rate wasn't as good as we had anticipated, because of people have found ways of avoiding some of the extra premiums, and it's not helped by the fact that not the whole country has not adopted second homes council tax, which does allow people who have second homes elsewhere to jiggle around which one is primary and which one is secondary. Moving on, business rates again, not a bad performance for the first quarter, just slightly behind, but it's not a significant sum. And to date, business rates are being collected as anticipated. Housing rent collection, however, as we have said in previous reports, is still struggling, and significant work is required to recover this position. Work on the largest The tenants with the largest arrears is ongoing in discussions are with them about how to recover those arrears. Hopefully that will start seeing some small reductions in the amount of arrears, but obviously with the cost of living, it's not easy that people are going to clear their arrears very quickly, so it will be a long time coming. It's certainly a position we need to keep under review, and we are in discussions with Cornwall Council to see whether their systems for rent collecting we could move to a better rent collecting system, which may give us a better ability to chase down these debts slightly quicker. I'm not going to touch sundry debt is well online, doing good performance there. I will, however, mention the payment performance, which has a lot of red on it. What we have added is the number of invoices here for the first quarter under the table to put some context in around it. I'm not saying that this is an acceptable excuse or reason for not hitting the targets we have, but it's interesting that in the first quarter we processed 200 invoices, of which 173 were paid within the 30 days. So it was 27 invoices that were late. If we'd have paid another 8 invoices on time, we'd have hit our targets. So again, some of this is the number game, that we've got relatively small numbers. Therefore, when you put percentage proportions on them, we can turn red very, very quickly. It only takes 1 or 2 invoices to be late. That could be a process from our end in terms of, as I said before, our culture of not getting our purchase orders accurate and out in advance. It can also be that an invoice comes in and requires some further discussions with the provider to actually get them paid, and it only takes a few invoices to turn us from green to red. Again, that doesn't mean to say that we're not still trying to achieve, and we are working with the Cornwall Purchase to Pay team, which is what P2P stands for, because I think there are some changes in the system that would help us get better performance, because there is some stuff where we could have call-off orders, but call-off orders cause problems with grant claims, and we think there's a solution, but they need to think about how they change their system, which means a change for all users of that system, which is the issue. But we are having those discussions. The Treasury management activity is there. It's a statutory requirement to report our latest Treasury management indicators at least twice a year. We do it quarterly to ensure that we have complete transparency, and they're sat there. There's nothing I need to draw your attention to other than to say that we have, as we have said in our Treasury strategy and said in our budget setting report, starting to draw down some of the borrowing now that we've required to fund the capital programme for the last 3 or 4 years. We've had a positive cash flow. That means that we could delay borrowing, but we are now at a position where that cash flow has reduced as we draw down some of the reserves that we've been sat on for specific projects. Therefore, we need to actually take some of that borrowing on board. We're doing so on a very short-term basis on the expectations that in the short to medium term that rates may reduce. They won't reduce in the real short term unless something was announced in the last half an hour. But there's still a possibility that the rates are at quite a high level and they could reduce over time, so we don't want to lock in long term at higher rates. That sets up the report. I will take questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you. As ever, a very full and useful report from the 1.1 officer, Russell. Just like to point out on obviously the adult saving plan you're going to bring to full council in September. What I'd like, if possible, please, in advance of that, is when you've got a draft available, if that could be shared with myself, the lead member for adults and the chair, so we can have a review of that as early as possible, and then potentially a full members workshop if required, rather than wait until late September for that one, just so we can get a handle on exactly where we're looking at.
I can agree to that. Yeah.
Thank you. The only things to note is obviously well, it's good that we've got the contingency budget available. I am mindful that we're yet to have any serious disasters this year, and so obviously that could be swallowed up, so we can't be overly complacent. Okay. And then the only other thing I was going to mention was as you've already alluded to about the potential changes to P2P, I'm aware, because we've had discussions already of how that's going, so I look forward to seeing improvements on that for the payment suppliers, in particular for our local SMEs. Other than that, I had nothing to add to this, and I'd just like to propose a recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, just a couple of points from me really. I think the first one is around the airport, and it's an odd thing for me probably to say, but both operators get paid significantly in advance for their flights. We don't charge them significantly in advance for those flights. Even so, they're basically, so my premise is that they are sitting on a significant amount of money for a long period of time, maybe 6 months or 9 months if I book my flight now for next year. So the person that is, so I wouldn't say piggy in the middle is probably a bit strong, but the people that are always going to lose out in this scenario is the council at the airport. When, for whatever reason, flights don't operate for technical reasons or fog reasons. So I'm just wondering, in terms of our council cash flow, whether we should be charging up front for landing slots rather, and I don't know exactly how this works currently, whether we charge in, whether we do charge in advance or whether we're charging in arrears. But I'm wondering whether we should be looking at charging in advance to give us a nice positive cash flow so we can operate the airport, because my concerns is if we were to lose one of our significant operators at any point, then we would be in a really, really difficult position with the airport and not have any contingency moving forward. So by charging people in advance, we would have some form of contingency. Which would then obviously at some point have to be reconciled, but it just seems really odd that we're the only ones that don't get the money in advance, unless we do and I'm wrong. And the other point I would raise, I'm also disappointed to see that the SME payments are delayed. Again, this will affect many local businesses, I know, and I just want to make sure that we have adequate staffing within each department to make sure that these invoices are being processed in time, and is this a staffing issue or is it just a little glitch at this point?
In terms of the last point, the SMEs, that's the easier one to cover. You'll see in underneath the table that it was 23 local SME invoices that were paid outside the 30-day target over the first quarter, over the first 90 days. So I would still like to see that come down, the number that aren't paid, but it isn't it isn't a significant number of invoices that would cause major issues to all the SMEs on the island. So just put that into context, but we are working to improve it. It's been like this now for at least 2 years. We were having good performance before then, and as I said, we're working with the Cornwall team to see whether there's some system changes, and again, it's trying to get the changes in our culture. And in terms of staffing, some of our admin staff, we are having quite high turnovers and vacancies at the moment, which is not helping. But those are some of the lower paid roles that we have on the council, and obviously there is competition on the island, particularly at certain times, that makes it hard to recruit some of those roles, but we are doing everything we can. In terms of the airport, we charge in arrears based on the actual activity. We can only charge really for activity that they actually have. So we can charge, and we have already got in place with one operator a fixed charge based on the estimated number of flights and passengers they've had for the year, and they pay that on a monthly standing order basis. So that has already helped our cash flow a little bit. The other operator is minded to go the same way, but we've yet to get that secured and in place, and it probably won't be for a little bit longer yet. but in charging in advance, it's hard to charge in advance when we don't know how many passengers they've got. We would then have to be into a position where there's as the existing operators, and I know both operators, they do get the money in advance, but there's also a significant challenge in admin of having to do refunds, which they struggle with, and we would probably struggle even more so if we were getting money in advance. Flights got stopped because of bad weather. It would be right that we would refund the airlines, etc. And the admin behind that is quite significant, and I'm not sure we'd really get a real benefit from it. I think it actually increase our underlying cost in terms of the extra admin. So, but getting them onto fixed arrangements for the year has been what we've been doing for the last 2-3 years. Got quite close. We got one on and got quite close to getting the second one on, but obviously you can work out which operator it is, but with one of the operators having operational issues, we weren't able to get that secured this year. But there is a commitment to have those discussions before the start of next year from that operator.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Francis, then Councillor Sims.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm extremely concerned about the overspend. The way we're going with just Q1, we're never going to have enough contingency to get through the other 3 quarters. I am concerned about the overspend on fire and in a care home. And I would hope now that we've got this new care home that we can have a renewed marketing effort to try and deal with this problem we've had for years now, trying to recruit staff there and having to pay agency fees. We've had this problem for a long time and we need to solve it. So I think we need extra effort to do that, please. And I hope, going back to fire, that this won't continue, that this overspend was a one-off in the first quarter. The third overspend we've just been talking about, the airport. We had a very good suggestion from last year's lead member for transport, Councillor Sims, about getting the operators to pay a fixed sum, which meant that we could budget accurately for this council for the year. And the helicopter operator, I understand, took that and is exceeding in their flight sales, and therefore that's working really well. It's benefiting the council and it's benefiting the operator. However, Skybus wouldn't agree a fixed fee, and given their very poor service record for this year, we're still in a situation where we're amounting significant losses to the airport, which differently from the fire and the care home staffing situation, which are statutory considerations, the airport is not statutory and we should not be accepting this loss to the council. So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that our Transport Project Board reviews the situation with the income from Skybus urgently, so that this matter can hopefully be resolved, brought back to council to see how we can deal with this, because if we have further losses in quarters 2, 3 and 4, it's going to be a very serious position by the end of the year. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Thank you. just before I go on, listen to it all on the radio at the museum, and I can completely endorse what Tim Abel said, and my passengers were all enthralled. They actually started asking me questions about the town hall. But anyway, coming on to this, I completely agree, obviously agree with what Robert said. We have the airport, which is pretty much a fixed cost. We know what it's going to be to a very, very fine degree every year, and we have variable pricing, and it's just wacko. I think we definitely need to get a fixed fee from the operators. And I'm looking at the cumulative passenger numbers. Well, it's looking pretty grim at the moment, and given the, perhaps less than perfect performance by one of the operators this year, I would anticipate that there's going to be quite a big shortfall. So I think that we urgently need to do that, get that remedy. And I'm also, maybe we'll get through this year, maybe we'll get through next year, but I think, you know, looking into the future, unless we get our settlement adjusted, we have no future really, because we just are not getting enough money to function properly as a local authority. And so we've got to keep on pushing on that. And another thing, we've got to balance the budget next year, and we may be looking at cuts. And it's been mentioned before, the swimming pool, various things like that. Anything we would need to cut, we need to do an impact analysis. And if you start doing that in November, December, it's not ready for February, March, when we've got to balance the budget. So some of these things, perhaps we should be looking at doing an impact analysis now, so that we're ready to take them out of service, basically, if we unfortunately have to. So that's my point, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sims. Councillor Legg.
Whilst the underspend in children's service is welcome to offset the overspend in the other areas, I'm concerned about the impact this could have on service delivery, and I just want to check that recruitment is happening and is going well, and we're not expecting to have to look at any market forces supplements to levels of pay to encourage anything which would result in long-term overspend, even though it's underspent currently.
We don't foresee the need to increase the salaries any more than they are at the moment. Recruitment is ongoing. There is quite a bit of activity that the director is taking place during August. She has just carried out some temporary admin recruitment over the last couple of days with the help of HR. So yeah, activity is constant on the recruitment situation. But we are turning over staff on a relatively quick basis in that service at the moment. And I agree with you. With my finance hat on, I'm sitting there saying, well, it creates a saving. When you've got quite high staff turnover, you have vacancies. It just does deliver a saving in your budget. On the other side of things, it does have a detrimental impact on service delivery and does put pressure on the remaining staff in the service, which the director is obviously closely monitoring.
Thank you.
Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I was just going to turn to capital projects, and with publication of paper in part 2 as well, I just wanted to ask Nicola, I can see 47% of the Carn Thomas, is that right? Yeah, 47% of the Carn Thomas project has been spent. Is that going according to plan?
The Carn Thomas or Carn Guavel? Carn Thomas?
Carn Guavel, that's 47. I am asking about Carn Guavel. I mean, sorry.
Carn Guavel, yeah, sorry. Carn Guavel, at the moment, we're working with the contractor well. They're doing overnight working as required, and the project is on plan at the moment and currently on budget. There will be some compensation events, of course, as we go through the programme, but early days, working well, both with the service users who are on site while the works are going on around them, but also with the developer who's been really accommodating. So far, so good, but early days.
Okay, and the museum as well, because I note that in part 2 paper, there were 7 more early warning notices this month. Is that more or less than you expected? Is that a trajectory?
Well, the trajectory is very much going down. So in terms of compensation events and early warning notices, the numbers are much reduced. And also the approach taken by Stepnells and the project management team has been to resolve issues as early as possible within the process. So that is helping. And there is I would say, a change in mindset, a more solve the problem issue rather than slam in some compensation events from the developer too. So much more proactive and positive approach from everyone involved to try and keep this on track. And the latest programme shows the delivery date for once has not slipped. So that's a good sign that we're on the right track.
Thank you.
Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just take everyone's attention back to the carer consideration of the carer role and the turnover that we seem to have. Obviously, some of that is linked to how much we can pay. But it does occur to me, especially having seen more of the work that is now currently being done up at Island View, that the carer's role is becoming increasingly complex, and carers are increasingly being asked to do more nursing tasks. Therefore, I think, which I'm sure is being done, constant evaluation of the carer role, I think, is really important, because obviously if people are being expected to do an extended role, it seems more than reasonable that we should pay them accordingly. And this would not then have the knock-on effect, I think, of having to pay everyone else at that same grade more, because we would actually be moving carers up a grade rather than just paying one particular cohort of our council staff more. But I'm very mindful that I mustn't tread into the operational area, so if I have, I apologise.
Thank you very much. If I just may say a few comments in relation to the sort of 4 headlines that we've been discussing in detail. I'm investigate some of the adult social care opportunities we've discussed in terms of recruitment, retention, the work that needs to be done around budget and savings plans, so we can pick that up. Children's services, it's positive in some ways. We have an underspend, but obviously that creates capacity challenges at a time when we need really not to have capacity challenges as we sort of race towards our next ILAT inspection. Fire and rescue is a two-edged sword, isn't it? We talk about recruitment and retention. We've had some really successful recruitment in fire and rescue, is my understanding, but that comes with costs which are associated with the overspend we had this morning. So but we need to make sure they're trained appropriately. And then the airport, I take your comment, Councillor Francis, about the Transport Board. And also we've had conversations in the last few days with the Chief Exec of one of the operators. And I think I'll look to sit down with the Chief Executive and the Chairman of the operator with yourself and the Vice Chair. And we can perhaps sort of move some of these conversations further forward. So there's sort of 2 edges to that. Councillor Mumford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I welcome your suggestion of having a meeting with Russell and maybe Sue Butcher as well. I know Russell has been pushing for a financial savings plan, but it hasn't come through yet, so I think we need to push even more for that. Housing is one of our problems for getting staff, but hopefully within 9 months, possibly, we might have a bit more accommodation. I think also we could advertise for local people. There may be some local youngsters that would be interested in doing an apprenticeship, and they could actually be housed as well. If they're living with parents or something and already on the list, so that would be another thing to try and get some more local staff, I think. We know it's a problem. It's a problem all over the country with all the care homes that are run by councils and the hospitals as well. They're relying on agency staff all over the country. So we're not the only people. And everybody is doing all they can.
Thank you for that. So at the start of our conversation, Councillor Nixon proposed the recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please? 4 hands went up at once. Councillor Sims, I'll take you were seconding. All those in favour, please. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That is carried. Agenda item 12 is electoral review by Local Government Boundary Commission for England, which, Joseph, you're going to talk us through.
Thank you, Chair. So the Local Government Boundary Commission for England is conducting an electoral review of the Council of the Isles of Scilly. The Council is being reviewed because the Boundary Commission has a duty to review local authorities in England from time to time. The last review took place in 2016 when the size of the Council was reduced from 21 to 16 members. The review is comprised of 2 main parts: Council size, which is the total number of councillors to be elected to the Council, and warding arrangements, which is the number of wards, the ward boundaries, and the number of councillors to be elected to each ward. And the council has been invited to submit proposals to the Boundary Commission on both council size and warding arrangements. In assessing council size submissions, the Boundary Commission will consider three key aspects, specifically the arrangements for strategic leadership, accountability, and community leadership. In assessing warding arrangement submissions, the Boundary Commission will consider three statutory criteria, which are delivering electoral equality, so ensuring as far as possible that each councillor represents a similar number of electors, reflecting community identity and interests, and delivering effective and convenient local government. A draft council size submission, including 3 appendices, may be found as appendices 1 to 4 to the report. The draft council size submission takes the view that an increase in council size is neither desirable nor necessary, with the present system of governance working efficiently and effectively, and a decrease in council size could leave the organisation too small to discharge its functions. Consequently, the final proposal of that submission is for no change to the size of the council, i.e. there should be 16 members. A draft warding arrangement submission, including 4 appendices, may be found as appendices 5 to 9 to the report. The draft warding arrangement submission takes the view that each off-island should continue to have its own elected member to ensure that all communities are effectively represented on the council, and St Mary's should continue to be a single ward rather than being subdivided into smaller units. The draft warding arrangement submission also considers whether there is a case for a modest increase or decrease in the number of St Mary's councillors on the basis of electoral equality, but as you'll see, the conclusion is ultimately in favour of the current number of 12. Consequently, the final proposal of this submission is for no change to the warding arrangements for the Council of the Isles of Scilly, i.e. there should be 4 single-member wards for the off-islands and 1 12-member ward for St Mary's. The Boundary Commission is planning to consider the Council submissions at its meeting on the 18th of August. After that meeting, the Boundary Commission will publish its draft recommendations. The draft recommendations will be put out for consultation, public consultation from the 25th of August to the 19th of October. The Boundary Commission encourages councillors to take part in the public consultation, as individuals or as groups. In addition, they hope that councillors will encourage members of the community to take part as well. The Boundary Commission will hold a further meeting on the 17th of November to reconsider the draft recommendations in light of the consultation responses, and final recommendations will be published on the 1st of December, although the Boundary Commission could recommend another round of consultation at that stage, but that wouldn't not to be expected. It's worth noting that the Council cannot veto the final recommendations from the Boundary Commission, and we've been told that after the final recommendations have been published, they will lay a draft order in both Houses of Parliament. If the draft order is approved, then any new electoral arrangements will come into effect at the next all-out council election, which is in 2029. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose the recommendation. I'm just curious, page 4, well, page 95, the actual numbers of the electorate over it adds up to about 1,500 for the entire islands. Now, that's about 800 short of the population. We haven't got that many children. Are there a lot of people who are just not registering or falling out of the loop?
Sorry, which page are we looking at here?
Page 4 of the report, of the actual report, page 95. The electorate of each island, it adds up to just short of 1,500.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, so I mean, the total number on the electoral register is about 1,550, 1,600. So I guess by the time you allow for, people who are under 18, and then a proportion that aren't on the electoral register, full stop.
And I was just thinking maybe some people are falling out of it. And the other thing, immediately after that, which is not really pertinent to this proposal, but it says the census figures, blah, 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 show that England, compared to the rest of the country, we have more older people and fewer younger people and children, which I think is quite a nice evidence thing for us to hold on to, because that's an issue for the islands. Our age demographic is going to make it increasingly problematic as we move onward. So not necessarily relevant for this, but I think it's, like I said, a handy piece of evidence.
Thank you for that. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I will second the recommendation and like to thank Joseph for drawing together the submission. It's a very convincing piece of work. Thank you.
Okay, we have a proposer and seconder for the 2 recommendations. I can't see any other lights on for further comments. So all those in favour of supporting the recommendations, please show your hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That is carried. Agenda item 13, Joseph, is with you. Trustee appointment to the Isles of Scilly Charitable Trust.
Thank you. So, members are invited to appoint one nominative trustee for a 4-year term to the Isles of Scilly Charitable Trust, comprising the Edward MacDonald Fund and the Pilot's Widows Fund. This vacancy has arisen due to the expiry of the previous 4-year term of Mr. Tim Jones. The Isles of Scilly Charitable Trust is an independent charitable trust that took its current form in July 2022, when the Pilot's Widows Fund was merged into the Edward MacDonald Trust. The charitable purposes of the Isles of Scilly Charitable Trust are drawn in extremely broad terms. Apart from 3 small prescribed yearly payments, general funds may be applied for such charitable institutions, organisations or purposes within the Isles of Scilly as the trustees think fit. The former assets of the Pilot Widows Fund are ring-fenced for charitable purposes associated with maritime endeavours on the islands. The management of the trust is undertaken by a body of trustees, which when complete consists of 7 members. That's 4 nominative trustees appointed by the council, 2 ex officio trustees who are the chaplain and the Methodist minister, and 1 full co-opted trustee who's appointed by the other trustees. Given that we have 1 vacancy, there are currently 6 trustees in place. Councillor Williams, Councillor Grottick and Mrs Sarah Hale are nominative trustees appointed by the council. Reverend Elizabeth Burke and Reverend Carol Holmes are the ex officio trustees, and Mr Steve Watt is the full co-opted trustee. Members are invited to appoint 1 nominative trustee to bring the body of trustees back up to its full complement of 7. Please note that nominative trustees appointed by the council may be, but need not be, members of council, and Mr Tim Jones has indicated that he is willing to be reappointed.
Thank you, Joseph. I'll go first as chairman of the trust. I would happily nominate Mr Jones for a continued term of office. He brings a lot of commitment and a very useful skill set to the charitable trust. Councillor Mumford.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Okay, I see no other lights on for nominees. So I think we are happy to take the recommendation with Mr Tim Jones as our nominee, as our nominative trustee. All those in favour of that, please show your hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, that is carried. Thank you very much, Joseph. Agenda item 14 is our Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service proposal to adopt a 5-year community risk management plan. Kevin, which you're presenting this morning.
Chair, members, I'm pleased to introduce this report, which I'm presenting following the decision taken by members in November 2025 to approve an extension to the 2023 to 2026 Community Risk Management Plan. The purpose of this report, alongside the accompanying interim CRMP, is to provide assurance on the progress made against the original plan's priorities and to set out a clear and transparent position on delivery to date. The paper acknowledges that during the lifetime of the 2023 to 2026 CRMP, the service experienced capacity challenges which impacted our ability to complete some of the elements of the plan within the original timescales. I want to be clear that these challenges were recognised, understood, and have now been addressed. Where activity has not progressed as intended, this report explains the reasons for that and avoids presenting progress in a way that lacks honesty and realism. Importantly, this paper does not simply look backwards, it sets out how outstanding elements of the CRMP will be taken forward, how they align with current risk, and how delivery will be supported by improved capacity, governance, and oversight. The interim CRMP provides the bridge between the original plan and our next full CRMP, ensuring continuity and risk management and strategic intent. I would ask members to see this paper as both an update and a reassurance. It demonstrates learning transparency and the renewed focus on delivery. As detailed elsewhere in the meeting pack, this paper has been presented to Scrutiny Committee, and I now invite members to approve its content. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mumford.
Yes, I'm happy to propose this. It's already been to scrutiny. So I'd like to propose the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mumford. Councillor Grottick.
I'm happy to second, but I would like to say, could you please just clarify that you're continuing to make efforts to address the gender balance issue that was mentioned in the report, because obviously I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that myself, the Chief Fire Officer, are certainly working towards, and we'll take that on board.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, we have a proposer, Councillor Mumford, a seconder, Councillor Grottick. All those in favour of the one recommendation, please show your hands. Thank you very much. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That is carried. Thank you, Kevin. Agenda item 15 is our Green Maritime Corridor feasibility study in the hands of our Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out today a summary of the position of the Green Maritime Corridor project. You can recall that the first element of it was a feasibility study. That has concluded in April this year. We bring you a summary of the findings of that. There is a more comprehensive report, but that is a confidential report due to its commercial sensitivity. But basically to say that, as set out in here from paragraph 3, that they undertook the feasibility work, the company that was running the project, and they have concluded that they do believe that there is a viable solution for an electric vessel to be able to run between the mainland and the islands, and then that could be a vessel that would take between 80 and 100 passenger capacity, and it would be able to run year round. They have factored in the weather, the tidal conditions, etc. And as part of that feasibility, I think it's set out clearly in the report that the sea conditions they know were challenging. They actually undertook that work, and part of their feasibility work did come back with a conclusion that actually their original proposal for a 2-motor vessel, they had to upgrade that to a 4-motor vessel with an increase in power to undertake the route with the sea conditions as it was. So they have, as I said, done that piece of work, identified adjustments to their original proposal, but they do believe that there is a vessel that they can build and would function with a fast route between Newlyn and St Mary's, and that this route could operate a number of times a day because of the speed of it. The next stage from their perspective, remember that we were sort of a partner in the first one. We're not leading this project, it's not our project, it's the source of funding for this and any future are through a process which is sponsored by the government through the, innovation, but that is for private sector organisations. Now, most of the private sector organisations who bid into those funds do so with a number of other partners, both private and usually public sector, and as it's an innovation fund, quite a lot of those public sector organisations are usually universities and research centres, but this one obviously we were the partner due to the benefits it could bring to the islands in not just a change in our transport mode and be able to bring more robust transport, but obviously a green transport solution, which with the risk and the pressures around the world these days on supply of carbon fuels, you have a potential vessel that would be able to withstand those international constraints around carbon fuel. And we also know that the government is on an agenda, or have been on an agenda, to put surcharges on existing technology for maritime travel. The proposal from the report is that the Artemis, who are leading on this project, are looking to put in a submission in September to actually into another round 2 of the funding programme, to actually produce and come up with a working vessel and fund the necessary key works both at Newlyn and on St Mary's to ensure that an electric vessel could operate. That bid will need to go in by the middle of September. Artemis are working on that. It isn't a council bid, it is an Artemis bid, but they've asked whether we're supportive of that bid and willing to be a partner in any future project. So this report is setting out that the positivity of the initial feasibility study, which said yes, there is a vessel that they believe can deliver this, and that they are now looking to move forward on that to produce that vessel with government funding to help subsidise it, to bring it into operation. Obviously the bid goes in mid-September. They will not know whether that's a positive or not until January, and the project would therefore start in April 2027. As with the existing project, we have made it very clear the council is not putting money into the project, and any resource we put into the project will be funded by the project and not by the taxpayer on Scilly. Obviously, when I say taxpayer, I say Scilly because obviously the overall project is being funded from government funding, which has taxpayers somewhere in the UK paying into it. So that is the position. I think as part of our, and we got the next report on the agenda is our latest position on our carbon position. I think that there's a great opportunity here that a vessel could be servicing the islands with a very, very green agenda. That helps de-risk with the, as I said, with the geopolitical national issues around fuel at the moment, and the likely direction that the cost of that fuel will go over the next 10 years. So that is the proposal set out to you, is that we say that we are supportive. I know there are some discussions about changes to the recommendations. I'm happy to listen to those, and over to you for questions and statements.
Thank you. I'll bring our lead member for Environment, Councillor Peacock, in first, please.
Thank you. So again, picking up on Russell's point, first of all, with the carbon report, you will note, if you've read the carbon report, that we are, as a council, doing fairly well. You know, we're on target. Happy days. However, the bit that we're not on target with is the transportation from here to the mainland and around the islands. So plainly, if we're going to continue to meet our carbon target, we have to reduce that down to a level, and this is one way of achieving that. Also note in the corporate plan that we are currently in a climate emergency. So I think it's really important that this project will enable us to fulfil those aspirations to a certain extent. It will provide us with obviously a non-fossil fuel alternative to what we currently have. And I think looking at the sector that we are dealing with in terms of our economy, I think that's a very strong marketing point that does not need to be lost on us. That a number of people come to these islands, and again, I've seen the latest report, but 65% of people come to the islands for the natural beauty and the environment. So if we can link in to that to say we are assisting that is only going to be positive. Some members may know that I'm UK chair of UK Passenger Boat Association in another role. I'm also sit on Workboat Association as well. The main direction that everybody's in the industry out on the mainland and European and even globally is to remove decarb. It's the big thing. It's been there. It's a big push from industry. Industry want to do this. We want to seem to be green. Maritime has massive, significant options. You can't just rock a cruise liner up and plug it into the mains like you can an electric car. So there are major, major issues around this. In fact, the MCA very recently, last month, set up an innovation hub to solve this very problem. So there are known national issues around this. We can help that. We can help a national issue. We can push forward this application. We can help the council with its carbon emissions. We can make sure that moving into the future, the islands become less reliant on fossil fuels. I would also make two comments around, obviously our existing operators don't currently operate in any way, obviously have to use fossil fuels because of their operation. Any operator can apply for ZEBI. In my other role as a passenger boat operator, I could apply for ZEBI. It's open to anybody. So I would like to propose the recommendations on that basis, that I think it's good for the islands, it's good for the council, and we need to move forward on it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peacock. Councillor Blackwell, your light was on next.
Thank you, Chair. So just in response to your comments there, John, I understand that the Selonian 4 can be converted to use hydrogen and battery fuel, but it does need the infrastructure imports to make that happen. The report, going back to the report, the feasibility study, the report gives us a conclusion on feasibility, but unfortunately it does not provide us with any evidence to support it, presumably due to the NDA agreements in place. It states, challenging weather would be managed with vessel configuration, operational limits and service planning. But it is unclear what the limitations for the vessel actually are, or to what degree of comfort passengers would be travelling in. There is a world of difference between feasibility and reliability. Also conspicuous by its absence is an impact assessment on the results of a further travel provider. To take a balanced and informed approach to the decision to apply for funding today, this is an essential piece of work which should have been provided. If the bid for funding succeeded, would we be happy relying solely on this service, as it may not be financially viable for 2 ferries? How would we feel about losing our freight boat and potentially air service should the current providers fail? If one air service fails, this would affect the airport on St Mary's and likely the second air provider. To agree to go for bidding would be jumping the gun, as we clearly do not have all the information necessary to make a fully informed decision. Common sense dictates that we should have all the information necessary now before proceeding further. The economic impact may have far-reaching and serious effects throughout our community and beyond, and we need to be informed of these before the outset, not after many hours of members' and officers' time spent on preparing a bid. Those who argue to proceed on a basis that competition is always beneficial should not assume that 2 services would automatically lead to lower fares. While the current provider has consistently welcomed competition, all operators must still cover their basic running costs, meaning ticket prices cannot fall below a commercially sustainable level. To be clear, we are being asked today to approve the submission of a bid to secure funding for the vessel and harbour infrastructure. To agree these recommendations, members should have absolute confidence that they are fully informed on the feasibility of the vessel and impact to our island community. To proceed now may lead us into another museum scenario, but for us to be ahead of the information game, we still have time before the bid needs to be submitted to receive a full impact assessment and hold a meeting, part 3 if necessary, to gain an understanding of the feasibility study. Ladies and gentlemen, fools rush in, so let us be circumspect in our decision making today and defer until we are fully informed. To that end, I would like to propose a recommendation to defer recommendations 1 and 2 until a full impact assessment on our island economy can be prepared and a part 3 meeting held to hear the evidence from the outcome of the feasibility study. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackwell. I'm expecting other recommendations. I'm not going to find a seconder just yet, but I've made a note and we'll come back to that one. Councillor Sims.
Firstly, I'd like to second John's proposal. I think there's two aspects of this. There's obviously the vessel. There's also the key upgrades. And I would just say I did think the report was perhaps a little bit too rosy. I mean, there's lots of issues with Newlyn and access and things like that. It didn't come up. However, that presumably will be ironed out when they do further studies, which will generate the information perhaps the Council of Blackwell wants. But at some point, the harbour on St Mary's, if we forget about Newlyn and Penzance, is going to have that electrification in it. It's inevitable, it will happen, and turning down another potential offer for government, which would be free turn downs, eventually they're going to just tell us stop asking us for anything. And regarding the impact on existing operators, that's absolutely not our concern. It's a state aid issue, which the Department for Transport will look into, and any existing operators can make submissions to the Department for Transport regarding the state aid issue. So I don't think that's a consideration we should be making, because we haven't got the information, and it's not our jurisdiction. Well, that's it really.
Thank you, Councillor Sims. Councillor White.
Yes, one question. So on paragraph 5 of the report, which is on Agenda Pack page 146, there's an assertion that the work to the harbours could be done without major civil works. I'm just questioning whether that is the fact. Surely there'd have to be additional infrastructure work and development done at Newlyn to accommodate the flow of passengers, car parking, shuttle buses, things like that, before we get on to the electrification of the quay. But that electrification of the quay, as Councillor Sims has pointed out, would be beneficial to existing operators as well, and future operators. But yeah, just that question of, is it really feasible without major civil works?
I'll make comments against a number of the comments made by members, but first of all, Councillor White. Discussions have been had between Artemis and the Harbour Master and the owners of Newlyn, and that's where they've concluded with how a proposal could work. Yeah. There will obviously be some changes needed to the infrastructure in and around Newlyn, but it's not significant, I don't think. I think I was probably in a similar place to you, thinking there's going to be, but they've had those discussions. They have worked out a plan that could work. So, yeah, I'm assured that those discussions being had. This isn't somebody sat and they've just in an office somewhere else. They've been down to Newlyn. They've had those discussions with that harbour master and the various operators down there about how to do it. So, yeah, has already been looked at. In terms of looking at the fuller economic impact, etc., part of the project going forward, would obviously do that. It is not our project to decide whether to submit or not. Artemis will submit or may submit with or without us being being supportive of it. It is up to them if they so wish. And I think, as Councillor Sims has said, these are commercial operated routes. We have no say over who can come in. We could have somebody come in with a boat very similar to the Solonian tomorrow morning. We would have no say over that. And, you know, that could happen. It is a purely open commercial routes. We have done an awful lot of lobbying with the government over years of whether they should be open commercial routes, whether they should be regulation put along those. Obviously, interestingly, the existing operators have been against any regulation putting in to protect those routes. They want the routes to be open and commercial and controlled by the commercial sector, and that is where we are. Artemis will probably continue to put the bid in, whether we're supportive or not. If we're not supportive of it, then obviously we will play no further part in the project, and we will just, we will be told when the vessel is coming and when the works are happening. Although none of the works are on our assets, so we probably won't even be consulted on those. My view is that the technology and people are feeling that, is it, can it, etc. I'm sure Innovate UK, when they have the submission, will have experts who will look at that, and if they think that the submission is not viable, either from a technical point of view, that the operator is being overly optimistic, or that there's commercial or economic implications, which means that it shouldn't go ahead, that Innovate UK will take that into account when they look at and assess the bid. Again, it's not our bid, we're not assessing it either, but I'm sure Innovate UK will take all those factors into account when they look at it. I'm happy that we can share the original feasibility study. I would suggest that probably the best way to do that is through the transport group in the first instance, and then how we then roll that out. It is under an NDA, and there are some very, very commercially sensitive information in there. It isn't just about our route. There's some innovation in there which is worth a significant sum to the people that have developed that technology, as they are looking at a world market, not just this. This would be one of a significant number of vessels that they expect to be able to build and place throughout the world. So that's one of the reasons we're sensitive about it. It is, or they're very sensitive about it. Our route is one, but they hope that this technology, particularly with the drive, as John has already pointed out, there is a massive drive across the whole world in terms of reducing the carbon footprint on marine. I think, you know, we all look up in the sky and think that it's the airlines that are the worst polluters, but actually the marine sector is far bigger polluter around the world than the airlines are. And so the push is for zero emission vessels. I know that there are several in Europe. Okay, they're not running over particularly difficult sea conditions between Germany and Scandinavian countries, but that is the direction of travel that the maritime world is going. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add something if I can. I've had some representations from members of the community that have concerns about this report and this project, and I think it's very important for people watching us today to understand what this is and what it isn't. You know, what it is it's looking at the possibility of diversifying transport options to the islands, adding resilience and an element of future-proofing to our infrastructure, and it's looking at that and seeing whether the government, through ZAVI2, will fund further exploratory work and development. And what it isn't is committing the council yet to a future project or an attempt by the council or anyone else to undermine existing operators. If it goes ahead, and it is an if at the moment, it would produce a vessel and put in place infrastructure to make the route operable for such a vessel, and then there would be a tender on the open market to find an operator, and existing operators could bid for that, and existing knowledge of the route could be beneficial to them in that process. I'm minded to vote in favour of the proposal today, not only because it's an exciting possibility, but because I would like to see more detail. I'd like to see the modelling done in the feasibility study. I'd like to see impact assessments, both the impact on the community and existing businesses, which, from what I've heard today, I understand would be made available to members if government gave them the green light and this came back to full council in the future. I would also like to say that while we're exploring the options and looking at the future, it's important that we continue to improve our relationships with the existing operators and see how we can work with them and government to find funding or a mechanism, find funding or a mechanism to bring prices down on our existing vessels and routes. I'm as frustrated and concerned about the cost of passenger and freight transport as anyone else in this room, and the current lack of resilience on fixed-wing flights, falling passenger numbers, and the impact all of that is having on residents, visitors and local businesses is hugely worrying. But I think it's also important that we work with what's in front of us in the here and now, as well as keeping an eye on innovation and future possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. I didn't see between Councillor Marcus and Councillor Nixon whose lights went on, so I'll let you fight that one out. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor White. I think it's right and proper that we air and speak about the concerns that have been raised with us about this project from the population of the islands. I think everyone, myself included, is really concerned about the fragility of the island's transport network and how that would be affected by a new project coming in. I mean, I've forwarded on to all members an email chain I had with Nigel Blackler, the author of the paper, about this project, asking whether it was a agreement to participate in the preparation of the bid or committing in principle to the project if funding is secured. I understand what the Chief Executive is saying, but I think the weight of support of the council would be quite significant in whether the bid was actually happening or not. So I think it's right and proper that we have a discussion about it and decide whether we support the bid or not. To that aim, I'm glad to hear that we can see the existing feasibility study. I would say that goes to all members straight away. We don't need to filter that through the transport group because it's for all members to see that, to be honest, I think. I would also like to propose a recommendation, a change to the recommendations, that we delete half of recommendation 2 from, so we finish recommendation 2 on the line vessel and infrastructure round 2, everything else deleted. And then a third recommendation is that prior to any future decision by council regarding the acceptance of funding or implementation of the project, members provided with sufficient information, including commercially sensitive information where necessary through exempt arrangements, to enable proper consideration of the project's financial, operation and commercial implications.
Thank you very much. I can see your hand is up. Go, Councillor Grottig. Go next.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if it's possible to have a comment from Nigel Blackler. Is he still with us?
He's not with us. He's not available today to...
Or possibly the Chief Executive on the support for the rewording if we are inadvertently causing ourselves any grief by amending that recommendation.
Although Nigel's not here today, he's seen the proposal by the ones by Councillor Marcus, and he is content with those, as I am on that one. We hadn't seen or heard of the one from Councillor Blackwell as of this morning, so we can comment on the ones from Councillor Marcus. We have seen, and Nigel has made comments on those, and they're not negative comments.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 points, really. One was, I've also had representations from a member of the public. They were concerned about any disruption to the quay itself if this work takes place. So I'd just like to put out there that obviously at this point there's no agreement to any changes as yet to the quay, and I would assume that as part of any risk assessments we would ensure that there's going to be no disruption to freight, damage to the quay, etc., that would compromise the island. The only other point was just on a point of practicality. We discussed looking at the feasibility study, just whether it go to the transport group or to all members. As the bid's got to be submitted by the 16th of September, how soon would our officers need to start working on that?
I mean, our officers are doing this is a bid primarily being led by Artemis. Any information or help they will ask for, we will provide, but it's very, very minimal. We know we are not experts at vessels and vessel building and vessel operations, so our input is very, very small. So there isn't any issues about our resource or when it starts. The primary piece of work, the big piece of work, the whole bid is being put together by the Artemis company.
Councillor Legg.
The language that's been used by the Chief Executive, the lead member for Transport, the Vice Chair, has been towards supporting Artemis Technologies, Innovate UK and the Department for Transport with their bid. And yet the recommendation proposed talks about the council working with to submit a bid. Would it be acceptable to change the recommendation to read that following the outcome of the study, members approved the council supporting Artemis Technology, Innovate UK and the Department for Transport to submit their bid to the Zero Emission Vessel and Infrastructure Round 2? Because I feel that would demonstrate to the public that we are in a supporting role, not in a lead role.
Yeah, comfortable with that submission, and have already also discussed that proposal overnight with Mr. Blackler, and he has no comments on it either.
Okay, I'm making scrupulous notes about all the recommendations as and when they come in, so we'll try and capture the various different recommendations in just a minute. Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. CEO mentioned there would be no cost to council, but in the worst case scenario, and I am talking about in the future here, we could end up subsidising this service if the other operators fail. Also, I'm not against this project. I'm feeling rather railroaded. I think it's better to pause, have all the information and be fully informed before we make a decision which we can be confident in. We do have time to do this, and we should understand the community impact before we move forward.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring lead member for transport in first. You haven't spoken yet, Robert.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to make a comment regarding Councillor Blackwell's comments just now, and that is that all we are being asked to do as a council here is to support the application for funding so that this can go through to government to see whether or not they will provide the cash for this innovative project. If we do not agree to this, then Artemis may well say, well, we're trying to help these islands, and if they don't want to support us in this application, then why would we want to continue? And the application opens in September, and if we don't support it, then they may miss the chance to do this for us. I understand the concerns that have been raised, absolutely fully understand it, but as we discussed the other day when we had a members' meeting, there is no decision here on, even if we do get the funding, or if Innovate UK and Artemis get the funding, that does not mean that the project will go ahead. If there's anything involving the Isles of Scilly with a ship, we would have obviously a major role to play in the decision of that coming here. And members, as we agreed previously, would have every opportunity to question anything to do with how this may affect the community, either in a beneficial way or hurt the community. So I just would like to make it very clear that we have an opportunity here to take this green issue forward with zero emissions that could be a huge benefit to these islands. And I would also make the comment that there is no operator involved. I mean, obviously there isn't even a ship involved. There isn't even the money for the ship involved yet. But if the money is agreed for the ship and the ship is built, then there would be an operator required. And I understand from Nigel Blackler that an operator would go out to tender. And I know that the steamship company, our incumbent operator, would be able to bid in that tender the same as any other operator. So that is another perspective here. But I just would like to reiterate that there is no decision being made here about bringing in another service. We are purely, if we agree to this, we are purely supporting an initiative to try and raise this money from government for a green maritime corridor to Scilly. Thank you.
Can I just come back to Robert? Thank you. I'd just like to say I'm not against it. I just want all the information now rather than later so we can really make a confident and informed decision. I'm not against it. I just want to be ahead of the information game. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, then Councillor Roger, then Councillor Peter.
I'm going to have to go in a second, and I'm just going to say I did second John's initial recommendation, and I'm happy to amend my seconding to incorporate Dan's and Harry's changes. But I'm going to have to go very, very soon.
Thank you. You and Councillor Roger.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I find myself agreeing with a lot of what everyone said, which is in slight conflict because there's some conflicting views. I think it's incumbent upon the council to encourage and facilitate and help and support innovation in anything that might affect our community, our economy, etc. I agree with a lot of what Councillor Blackwell has said as well, and Councillor Francis, therefore in conflict in some ways. But I think ultimately I would support the amendments that Councillor Marcus has asked for, and I think we need to ensure that before any potential operation comes into discussion, that this council continues to discuss this at length and in detail with the full information before us. You know, like I'm led to believe that, you know, the infrastructure improvements in both harbours are not minor, they are massive. And I think we need further information in front of us, but I would support that we move to the next step. So I think it's incumbent upon this council not support that.
Thank you, Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, I obviously made a proposal right at the start of all this to propose the recommendations as written, but I would happily have the addition of Dan's and Harry's comments if I'm able to.
We'll do recommendations in due course.
But the only point that I would like to make one other point, and that is that this isn't going to be a situation, I feel, looking at how the government is currently spending its money, I don't necessarily feel this may be our only option here. And I'll be very disappointed if we all think that ZEVI will come around every year. It may move on to something else. So I think it's really critical that we understand that the opportunity is here and now. And it may well not be here and now in 6 months' time or 8 months' time. There's a very, very finite application period, as I know, because I'm doing an Innovate project myself.
Thank you. I'll bring Councillor Dean in, then I'm hoping we can start dissecting words and paragraphs and things like that. So, Councillor Dean.
Well, I'm hoping I'll help with that because I agree with Councillor Roger, really, that if I can be critical of the paper, I don't think the paper was very well written in what it was asking us to approve. So this discussion that we've had is very useful to get some clarity to the public about what it is we're asking the council to do. So I would fully back what Councillor Legg said about saying that we're supporting rather than whatever it says, working with. And I completely back what Councillor Marcus said with the third recommendation as well, so that we've got it in writing that it has to come back to us again if it's going to progress any further. Having said all that, you know, personally, I think it's a great initiative. I'd love to see a green maritime corridor between here and the mainland. But there are implications, as Councillor Blackwell has pointed out, and you know we may get unwanted consequences. So we need the information. But as long as we can have it coming back to us before it goes any further, with that information, then I would go along with the recommendations. So hopefully that's helped to clarify what I think and what I think has been proposed. So I'll shut up.
Okay, thank you very much. So before getting into recommendations, I was just going to say there are just 2 points I think I just wanted to pick up. The Transport Board, I think this is exactly why we need that Transport Board with operators, Duchy of Cornwall, ourselves, other partners as well to be engaged. So the sooner we can get that active going forward, and then that commitment to share the feasibility study with any redactments or whatever would be positive too. So I think we'll pick up on that. Shall we start exploring recommendations?
My view is Councillor Blackwell has proposed a change first before anybody else. Therefore, you need to take a vote on whether her proposal has a seconder and becomes substantive before you get to the rest. Okay. There is an order process.
So, Councillor Blackwell, could you just remind us in summary what your revised recommendation was stating?
Certainly. Defer recommendations 1 and 2 until a full impact assessment on our island economy can be prepared and a Part 3 meeting held to hear the evidence from the outcome of the feasibility study.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a seconder for that, if anyone is willing to second that. Speak now or forever hold your peace. I cannot see a seconder for that, Councillor Blackwell.
So that fails. So next one is Dan's.
So I think recommendation 1. I don't think there's any concerns about recommendation 1. Recommendation 2, there seems to be 3 areas around that. There's what we have on paper now. There was Dan's suggestion, which I'll ask him to read out, which seemed to be removing half of the paragraph. And then Councillor Legg was looking to adjust some of the terminology. So, Councillor Marcus, are you able to read out what your second recommendation is?
So my second recommendation, I mean, I can incorporate Councillor Legg's recommendation.
I would, yeah.
So it's, recommendation 2 becomes that following the outcome of the study, members approve the council working with Artemis Technologies, Innovate UK and the Department of Transport to submit their bid. Sorry, I got that wrong. No.
Yeah, change working with to
support. So I'll start again. That following the outcome of the study, members approve the council supporting Artemis Technology, Innovate UK and the Department of Transport to submit their bid to the Zero Emission Vessel and Infrastructure Round 2.
So that's proposed recommendation 2.
And I'll second that recommendation.
Proposer Councillor Marcus, seconded Councillor Legg.
Yeah, through this thing.
Yeah, so to make that our substantive second recommendation, we've got a proposer, we've got a seconder. All those in favour?
Yep.
Any against? Any abstentions? 1 abstention.
So that becomes a substantive. Steve to stay. Just to get the vote. I'm going now, just saying. No, we've got to have one more vote before you can go.
And was there a third recommendation?
Yeah, the third recommendation is that, so this is slightly different to what I said earlier, but it's the one agreed with Nigel, that prior to any future decisions regarding the acceptance of funding or implementation of project, a further report be brought to full council to enable members to consider the full implications for the council before deciding whether to proceed.
Okay, so I've got a proposer for Councillor Marcus for those words.
I'll second that.
Councillor Legg seconding. All those in favour of that becoming a third substantive recommendation? Any against? Any abstentions? Councillor Blackwell? Fine. So we've got 3 substantive recommendations now. First one remains unchanged. Second one is the amalgamation of Councillor Marcus's words, Councillor Legg's words, and removal of some of the words from the report. And the third one will be what we just voted on. I assume we can do them all together? Yeah. Okay. So do I have a proposer and seconder for recommendations 1, 2 and 3? Councillor White, Councillor Nixon, all those in favour of recommendations 1, 2 and 3? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, members. Okay. Agenda item 16, Rebecca, Annual Carbon Report 2026.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. So this report presents to the Council's annual carbon report for 2026, which shows achievements made by Council and how Council is progressing towards its net zero by 2030 target. And the report shows that the Council's carbon emissions have reduced by 85% since the baseline year. Scope 1 emissions in particular have reduced by more than 50% due to the installation of the solar panels at Normandy Pool. So this project demonstrates how renewable energy installations can significantly reduce the council's carbon emissions, while showcasing the practical benefits of achieving this on island, and can provide a model for future decarbonisation projects across the council's estate. Although the council has made a significant step in reducing emissions, oil-based carbon emissions still make up the largest part of our Scope 1 emissions through the heating of our buildings. Other Scope 1 emissions are largely attributed to operational services vehicles. Scope 3 emissions have increased since the last report, as we have introduced informed estimates now on staff travel, which weren't previously captured, and that's all just part of our improving our data collection. In order for Council to meet its 2030 net zero target, we need to improve our data collection in relation to all emissions. We're seeking to add additional areas over the coming year, and will continue to do so. Further work will also need to be done to reduce emissions associated through the way we heat our buildings, and have previously reported on aiding our understanding of this better through a decarbonisation plan. As Council sets its new corporate plan, it will be important to ensure that any new targets in relation to net zero are realistic, especially considering the financial constraints Council is under. But to help support this work, officers will continue to scope opportunities to access grant schemes and continue our close working with local and regional partners. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Councillor Peacock.
I'd like to thank Rebecca for the report, but I would like to propose a recommendation.
Councillor Dean.
Just to be a bit pernickety, sorry. In the report you said the new corporate plan will help support the council's carbon performance and blah, blah, blah. That's a bit of an assumption there. We haven't done the new corporate plan, so it might be that the new corporate plan says we don't care about carbon emissions anymore, we'll choose to go the other way. So just that, and you also said about the local plan as well, which is obviously still in discussion as well. So just a point of order, I suppose. And also a slight criticism that there's no financial implications with this. We know there are, because when we've gone to net zero tariffs, they've been higher than non-carbon neutral tariffs. So there are financial implications to this, and I think it's only right and proper that we should air that in public so that people know that we're making a choice that may cost us some money. So just putting it out there.
Thank you very much. Council, anybody else wishing to make? Councillor Legg.
Just to come back on Councillor Dean's point there, that decision isn't a result of this report, and so hence that's why this report has no financial implications, even if the contents of the report are connected to decisions that do have financial consequences. I would comment that obviously heating has been less required recently, but air conditioning is perhaps something that's being considered more, which would result in increased electricity usage, higher costs. Potentially, as Councillor Dean mentions, if we're choosing to spend more money on renewable electricity, then it may be that suddenly we decide to revert to a carbon-based electricity tariff, which would result in us having incredibly large emissions, because as we can see from the graph on page 154 of the reports pack, electricity was by far the largest emissions source for the council. I would be happy to second the recommendations that were proposed by Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Councillor Legg. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I want to thank Rebecca for the report. It makes interesting reading, and we've done a lot of good work here, and still got some way to go. But I just want to pick out paragraph 14, referring to the solar installation at Normandy Pool. So I think this is a very positive development for the council, and it shows the way to local energy generation and resilience. It's been of benefit to us, and more developments along those lines can only help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have a proposer and a seconder, Councillor Peacock and Councillor Legg. I can see no one else wishing to make recommendations or observations or comments. All those in favour of the two recommendations, please show your hands. Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Which brings us on to our final part one agenda item of the morning, I don't know what it is. Council performance summary and corporate risk register quarter one.
Thank you, Chair. I'll briefly go through the report for you. What you're presented with today is the quarter one non-financial performance data and the latest updated corporate risk register. Just to put some context around these, the key performance indicators that are included in the performance appendix are the existing performance indicators that we have been reporting on for the last couple of years alongside the original corporate plan. I have said that we will be revising those. We will revise those once the corporate plan, a new corporate plan is in place, because there needs to be a direct link between our KPIs that we measure and we look at on a regular basis and how they interact with your new corporate plan. But obviously without the corporate plan being approved as of yet, we're just continuing at the moment with the existing KPIs. I do want to change them, but obviously, as I say, that needs to be consistent with the corporate plan. The risk register, again, is there. All the risks have been updated. There is an extra risk being added this quarter, which is a result of the report that you had from the monitoring officer last month about from the work that she did in the report that she presented to you, and that's been added in terms of updating our key procedures and policies. That risk is now being added. Another piece of work that we're looking at commissioning is that our risk framework is a little bit outdated. Therefore, doing some work to our risk framework alongside the recommendations of external audit, and we will bring you that in due course. And obviously, we're anticipating we will do some further training on that as well for both members and officers. The reports are set out there. There is not just the data tables. If you go down to the bottom of the performance report, there is some narrative. Again, we are trying to improve the process. It is still work in progress, but there is some narrative produced by the relevant heads of service to give you some context on some of the performance. I take that you've read the report. If you have any questions, hopefully between myself and Nicola, who's the other officer online at the moment, we may be able to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the Chief Exec or Nicola? Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. Just one question. We've got 7 out of 15 items that are a red risk item, which are of grave concern. Can you clarify whether councillors have a duty to intervene when there are trending red indicators, or if responsibility remains with officers and CEO to manage the risk, please?
You're talking about the risk, managing the risk. The risk register is officers produce the risks. The owners of the risks are the officers. You'll see that in the report and in the table. But we bring it here for members to be aware of it, because you have an ownership of it as well. So if you think that there are risks that aren't on there, or you think the risks are not being described fully or correctly, then you can feed into that process through bringing this report here. It's a joint process, although the risk owners actually are the officers.
Is there a responsibility on councillors? A statutory responsibility?
You have a statutory responsibility, not necessarily for the risk, but you have a statutory responsibility to ensure that we have good risk management in place, so that we are advising you of the risks. You are challengers on our performance on the risks, etc. That is your role. You don't own the risk.
Thank you.
Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I just think it's worth noting the new risk, the updated risk for children's services, and how they're both in red. I think it's really important that members take an active role in children's services and work with the Director of People to ensure that when Ofsted do come and visit in September, October, November time, that we are all aware and cognizant of the information that we need to be to make sure that children's services is supported by councillors. That And we support the Director of People to make sure that Children's Services is as good as it can be for the benefit of the children on the island.
Thank you very much. Councillor Legg.
I'm conscious of current situation of boating operators. The council has a responsibility to ensure access to education, and so the risk is apparently present of the council not being able to provide access to education because of potential risks to services available. Perhaps that is something that the executive should consider adding to the risk register.
Right at the end. It's run boating.
Okay, so what you're saying is we've got a risk on the risk register number 15, which is inter-island boating. We ought to be more descriptive about our statutory service of school transport as part of the risk. I don't have a problem adding that in.
Yeah, I did just very specifically education access.
Yeah, education, nursery care, and health appointments. The list is long.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, inter-island boating sounds.
We'll take that on board, and
Perhaps a lower risk than actually naming the reasons for the boating.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we've got 3 recommendations. I see no further lights on. I don't recall having a proposer and seconder. Do any, Councillor Nixon, are you happy to propose? Or?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose and just like to say thank you to the officers involved putting the report together.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peacock, happy to second? Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. We have 3 recommendations. All those in favour of accepting recommendations, please show your hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes part 1 of this afternoon's meeting. We have 2 part 2 reports, one linked to planning, one linked to the Museum and Cultural Centre, which are there for information. We have no part 3 reports. I'd like to thank all members, all staff, and anyone else connected with this morning's meeting for their time at making it run relatively smoothly. Thank you very much.